Hi everyone, Jennifer Joy here from JenUwin Playtime. Today we're going to read a story from the Land of Stories. It's a treasury of classic fairy tales rewritten by the author Chris Colfer, who wrote the original book series, The Land of Stories. This is a bonus book of tales that we know that are rewritten into more of a modern setting so that they relate to us today. Okay, which story shall we choose? Today we're going to read Jack and the Beanstalk. I encourage you to draw a picture while I'm reading, and you can draw different elements that are significant from the story. Significant means important. So if you know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, you know that the beanstalk is significant, and what's at the top of the beanstalk up in the clouds? That's right, a giant! He's also significant. I look forward to seeing your pictures, so take a picture of them and send them in. Okay, here we go. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was a poor widow who had a son named Jack. The widow was a good woman, but had grown sad and gruff after a life of difficult times. Jack was a curious and daring boy. He always had his head in the clouds, daydreaming about a life full of excitement and adventure. They lived in a tiny cottage on a small farm that never grew any crops. The only thing they had to eat was milk from a cow they called Milky White. One day, the cow's milk dried up, so Jack's mother ordered him to take the cow into town and sell it. "Oh, Mother, we can't sell Milky White," Jack said. "She's like family to us." "Well, we won't be a family if we starve to death," his mother said. "Life is filled with hard choices, Jack. Sometimes we have to do things we don't like to survive. But in the end, they only help us grow. Now take the cow into village, sell her for a good price, and pick up a loaf of bread on your way home." Jack did as he was told, but with a heavy heart. He walked Milky White through the woods towards the nearest town, but stopped when they encountered an old man on the path. "Good afternoon, lad," the man said. He was a wacky old geezer with a long beard and tattered clothes. "Good afternoon, sir," Jack replied. "May I ask where you're taking this fine specimen?" the old man asked. "I'm taking her into town to sell her." "Well, my boy, it's your lucky day. I just happen to be in the market for a cow." "You want to buy Milky White?" "Well, I'm afraid I don't have a shilling to my name, but I'd be more than happy to make a trade for the beast," the old man said. "Well, I'm not sure my mother would really approve of a trade. She told me to sell the cow and then bring back a loaf of bread for supper." "My boy, what I'm willing to trade you is worth more than all the bread in the kingdom," the old man said. Well, the tradesman had gotten Jack's attention, but he still wasn't sure his mother would approve. What do you wish to trade?" Jack asked. The old man reached into his raggedy coat and pulled out a handful of beans. Yes. "Beans?" Jack asked. "But surely my cow is worth more than beans." "Well, these aren't just any beans," the old man said with a twinkle in his eye. "These are magic beans, guaranteed to grant your heart's wishes." Jack's eyes grew twice in size as he imagined the possibilities the beans might bring him. Here's a picture. Page turn. "Are you sure they're magical?" Jack asked. "Cross my heart and hope to die," the old man said. He held up his palm and then crossed his stomach. Jack swiped the beans out of the old man's hands and handed over Milky White's reins. He was so excited that he ran straight home without even saying goodbye to the tradesman. "Mother, Mother," Jack cried when he arrived home, "I've traded Milky White for magic beans! The man in the woods said they'll grant my heart's greatest desires." He happily poured the beans into his mother's open palm. She took one look at them and her face turned bright red. "Stupid boy," the mother said. "You've been tricked. There's nothing magic about these beans. We're certainly going to starve now." The widow angrily tossed the beans out the window and burst into tears. She locked herself in a room and cried all night at her son's foolishness. Jack went to bed mad with himself too. He couldn't believe how easily he had been deceived. He was so hopeful for a better life that he had let his hope cloud his judgment. The following morning, Jack awoke to a terrible screech. He hopped out of bed and found his mother in panic outside. "Look, Jack, look," she cried and pointed to the sky. "A beanstalk grew overnight while we were sleeping." Growing straight out of the ground was a massive beanstalk. It was so tall that it stretched all the way into the sky and disappeared above the clouds. "The beans! They must have grown when you tossed them out the window. They were magic after all." "Well, now help me gather some leaves and I'll cook us a nice beanstalk stew," the widow said. Well, Jack ignored his mother's wishes and immediately started climbing the beanstalk. "Jack, Jack, get down," the widow ordered. "You're going to get hurt." But Jack still ignored her. He couldn't help himself. This was the most exciting thing that had ever happened to him. He had spent years hoping to find a little adventure, and an adventure had found him. The higher he climbed, the better the view became of the land around him. And he climbed up so far up the beanstalk that he could see the entire kingdom, and even the kingdoms beyond it. When he reached the clouds, he was so high up that his house was just a tiny spot below, and he couldn't hear his mother's shouts, imploring him to climb down. He stroked the clouds with his hand and was delighted to learn that they were as soft and fluffy as he had imagined. The beanstalk grew through the clouds, so Jack continued climbing. He wanted to know how high the beanstalk went. He surfaced above the clouds into what looked like another world entirely. Ooh, we have a picture. Look at that beanstalk, and he's climbing, climbing, climbing. Yes. A sea of fluffy white hills stretched into the horizon all around him. To Jack's amazement, there was a paved road floating above the clouds. He hopped off the beanstalk and followed the road as it curved and wound around the cloudy abyss. As Jack traveled down the road, he heard a beautiful singing voice grow louder and louder. He had never encountered such a lovely sound and wanted to find its source. At the very end of the road, Jack found a massive castle. It was so big that Jack was the size of a mouse in comparison. He figured it must be the home of a humongous creature. Since Jack had always been more curious than fearful, he snuck inside the enormous wooden door to have a look inside. The castle was filled with the biggest objects Jack had ever seen. The furniture was so large that he could walk under the table and chairs without hitting his head. And the fireplace was so big that his entire house could fit inside of it. Everywhere he looked, he saw piles of gold the size of dinner plates. Jack wasn't a thief by any means, but since there was so much gold and he and his mother had so little, he figured it wouldn't hurt to take some home. So he filled a large bag with as much gold as it could hold and threw it over his shoulder. And just as Jack was about to leave the castle, he heard the beautiful voice singing again. And Jack could have sworn he saw a golden woman standing on top of the enormous table. Once again, his curiosity got the best of him, and Jack went to take a closer look. He climbed up the chair leg, stood on a seat, and then pulled himself up on top of the table. And what did he see? It wasn't a golden woman he saw, but a magic golden harp with arms and a face. She sang a song while the strings attached to her back magically played along. Many years I've had to wait. My hero is rather late. I sing songs of affection, but receive no protection. Have my rescuers all died? Has anyone even tried? Rescue is such a burden. Only one thing is certain. Princesses don't benefit when their princes don't commit. Some damsels stay in distress due to lack of interest. The harp gasped when she saw Jack walking towards her. A person, she said. Oh, thank the heavens. At last, someone has come to rescue me from the giant. What giant? Jack asked. The giant that lives in the castle, of course. He's a horrible and terrible creature. He forces me to sing terrible songs for him every day. Please, please, you must take me with you. Suddenly, thunderous footsteps came from above them that caused the whole castle to shake. Oh no, the harp said. He's awake. You must hide or he'll eat you alive. Jack scrambled down from the table and hid in the giant's oven. A few minutes later, a terrifying giant stomped down the gigantic staircase. He was so large that the enormous castle seemed too small for him. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. Oh no. The giant looked all over the castle for Jack. He searched every cupboard and every drawer, but it never crossed his mind to look in the oven. After a while, the giant grew tired of searching, so he sat down at the table. Sing me a song, the giant demanded. The harp began a song Jack could tell that she didn't want to perform. Pillage, pillage, pillage the village, crush all the houses with your feet. Pillage, pillage, pillage the village, terrorize the people and steal their meat. As the harp sang, the giant's eyelids fluttered shut. He rested his head on the table and fell asleep. His snores were like the sound of 100 growling bears. Can you make that sound? Good. Jack climbed out of the oven and headed for the door with his bag of coins. Oh, please, please don't leave me, the harp said desperately. I couldn't bear living in this castle for another day. Jack was hesitant to rescue the harp, but he knew it wouldn't be very gentlemanlike to leave her there. So he quietly climbed back up the leg of the chair and made his way onto the table. The air coming from the giant's nostrils was so powerful that it almost knocked Jack off of his feet. The giant's eyes started to flutter open, so the harp continued singing to soothe him back to sleep. Pillage, pillage, pillage the village, stomp on the farms with your boots. Pillage, pillage, pillage the village, eat all the horses and steal all the loot. Jack scooped up the harp and carried her towards the edge of the table. They were right under the giant's nose when he took a deep breath in with his sleep, and he caught a whiff of Jack, and his nose twitched until he awoke. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman, the giant roared. He roared again when he saw Jack attempting to rescue his harp. Jack leaped off the table with his harp in the arms, and they landed directly on the giant's foot. Ah! The giant yelled. He held his aching toes and hopped around the castle on one foot. Jack held the harp in one arm and grabbed the bag of coins with the other. He ran to the door as fast as his legs would carry him, and he crawled under the door and dashed down the paved road to the Beanstalk. Right when Jack made it to the Beanstalk, the giant emerged from the castle and ran down the path after him. Jack hurried down the Beanstalk, but the giant followed him, causing the Beanstalk to sway among the clouds. On the ground below, Jack's mother heard the commotion and ran out of the cottage to see what was happening. She was so frightened to see the giant chasing her son that it took her a couple of moments to find her voice. "Jack, what have you gotten yourself into?" she yelled up at her son. Mother, get me the axe. I need to chop down the Beanstalk before the giant reaches the ground," Jack said. The widow ran inside the house and returned with an axe. Jack reached the ground and took the axe from his mother. In one enormous swing, Jack chopped the Beanstalk in two. It teetered over, and the giant went with it, falling to his death. "Oh, Jack, do you have any idea how worried I was about you?" the widow yelled. "I'm sorry I made you worry, Mother, but I promise you'll never have to worry about anything ever again. Look what I brought home." Jack emptied the bag of gold coins he collected at the giant's castle and showed them to his mother. The widow was so overjoyed that tears came to her eyes, and she hugged her son tightly and kissed his cheek. "My brave boy," she said, "you saved us. We'll never go hungry again." Jack and the widow used the coins to build a new home and started a proper farm that grew more crops than they knew what to do with. They ate 3 meals a day, and the harp sang them beautiful songs every night before bed. The old man's promise turned out to be true. The magic beans gave Jack all of his heart's greatest desires. But the true magic was inside Jack. Had he not been so certain about what he wanted out of life, the beans would have not known what to do. Jack's story taught a great lesson to everyone that heard it. When life hands you beans, grow a beanstalk. The end. That was Jack and the Beanstalk from the Land of Stories, a treasury of classic fairy tales written by Chris Colfer. And I'm your host, Jennifer Joy, from JenUwin Playtime. I look forward to seeing you again, and thanks for watching this Storytime video. So, what was significant in this story? At the beginning, we had the mother and her son, Jack, and they had what animal? That's right, a cow. A cow named Milky White. Yes, and Jack had to sell Milky White at the market, but encountered the 4th character, the tradesman. Yes, and what did the tradesman give Jack that was so important? The magic beans. But the mother thought the beans weren't important, so she tossed them out the window and got mad at Jack. And so Jack went to bed kind of feeling mad at himself. But in the morning, what grew? A big beanstalk. Yes. And so Jack crawled up that, and then he met the 6th character, the golden harp. Yes. And then the 7th character came on the scene. Fee, fi, fo, fum. That's right, the giant. So something you can draw in your picture is a little house, and then a big beanstalk, some clouds, and then a big castle on top. Or maybe you just want to draw the beautiful harp with the strings on her back. Maybe you want to draw Jack and his golden coins. Or maybe you want to draw the giant. It's up to you. I look forward to seeing your picture. Leave a comment below and let me know any other stories you'd like me to read. Thank you, kiddos. See you later. Bye for now.